Good afternoon and welcome to IBA News this Sunday the 19th of June. I'm Elon Aslan-Levy joining you live from Jerusalem. 3 people were killed and 7 injured in Tel Aviv last night after a 41-year-old motorist lost consciousness at the wheel, slamming his car into the crowded Furama restaurant on the city's Ben Yehuda street. 2 of the victims were named. Alan Weinkrantz, a 63-year-old American entrepreneur and public relations specialist from Texas, was standing on the pavement when he was hit by the car. The American embassy in Israel informed his son Aaron of his death. Menashe Raz, 47, of Ashdod, was also standing on the pavement speaking on his mobile phone when he was run over. Raz's daughter and sister-in-law were injured in the crash. Police quickly ruled out fears of a terror attack, saying the driver had apparently lost control after suffering a heart attack. The Cabinet this morning approved a 72 million shekel increase in funding for Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria. Joining me now with all the latest details is our political correspondent, Kalev Ben-David. Kalev?
Thanks, Alon. The financial package approved for the settlements is a one-off grant that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said is primarily intended to address security concerns. Some 15 million shekels are slated to go directly to communities over the Green Line to cover security-related expenses, while other funds will be spent on social welfare needs, psychological counseling for residents, and reinforcement of some buildings. The money will also be used to support medium and small businesses in the settlements, as well as the construction of new hotels and other tourist infrastructure. The Cabinet also approved the transfer of about 155 million shekels over the next 2 years to ultra-Orthodox yeshivot as part of the coalition deal with the Haredi parties. Opposition MK Itzik Shmuli of the Zionist Union blasted the decision, charging that the government was pouring tens of millions of shekels into the settlements instead of helping communities in the Galilee and Negev. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister came under additional attack over the weekend following speeches made on Thursday from his 2 former defense ministers, Moshe Ya'alon and Ehud Barak, who fiercely criticized his policies. Ya'alon called Netanyahu a fearmonger and said he intended to run against him for the Prime Minister's spot in the next election. Barak was harsher, saying Netanyahu had allowed the radical right to hijack the government. Barak's comments fueled speculation that the former Labour Prime Minister is preparing the ground for a return to politics, while a poll conducted by the Jerusalem Post showed that a new party, headed by Ya'alon and former Likud Minister Gidon Saar, would tie a Likud party headed by Netanyahu if elections were held now. Netanyahu hit back at Ya'alon in a Facebook video, saying his criticism was motivated by personal revenge after being forced out as defense minister in favor of Avigdor Lieberman, and accused him of zigzagging for attacking a government whose policies he himself played a major role in setting up until very recently. Alon?
Thank you, Kalev. How serious a threat is Ya'alon to Prime Minister Netanyahu?
Well, he's certainly a serious candidate, but the problem Ya'alon has in that same Jerusalem post I cited shows that what we call the right wing or the nationalist camp in the next election would still hold a majority. And that poses a problem because Ya'alon seems to have been broken in some way and from the right and made himself more of a centrist candidate. And so I don't know at the time, it looks like that he's someone that could really topple Netanyahu. But of course, things could change if we would have a military situation or a new diplomatic initiative, pressure from the United States, maybe after the November election, that puts pressure on the Netanyahu government. That could shift things here more to the center, and that would help Ya'alon.
Is this a serious bid for the premiership from Ya'alon, or is he positioning himself to reclaim the defense ministry, much like Moshe Kachlon split off from the Likud in order to win the finance ministry?
Well, Lon, remember, when Kachlon left the Likud, actually he was very cautious in his criticism of the party and even personally of Prime Minister Netanyahu. I would say Ya'alon has not only burnt that bridge, going back to a government or a partnership with Netanyahu, he's blown up the bridge. That said, this is Israeli politics. Anything
One
could
saw
happen.
how Avigdor Lieberman blew up bridges with the Prime Minister
you
before.
certainly can't rule it out, but I think he's made it clear he wants to aim for the top spots.
Well, let's take a look at another former defense minister and IDF chief of staff, former Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Is he planning a political comeback?
Well, it looked that way. Again, the problem with Barak is he certainly burnt his bridges with the Labour Party, now the Zionist Union, splitting from them, founding his own independent party. The problem is that party crashed and burned completely. So he really has not shown himself, unlike Yalon, someone that could command his own party. I really don't see where he has a home. I think he was saying, though, I'm ready, I'm here for maybe some kind of public role if there anyone willing, but I don't think there are going to be any takers.
Thank you, Kalev. Our politics never cease to intrigue and entertain. The Air Force dispatched 3 firefighting aircraft and a cargo plane with a rescue team aboard to Cyprus this morning to assist the island nation in battling a large wildfire in Paphos in the country's southwest. Israel's emergency assistance came at the request of Nicosia after local firefighters proved unable to contain the blaze, which had already consumed 5 square kilometers of vegetation. Local media reports described the fire as the largest in the island's history. As of today, no injuries have been reported. Local officials said the fire broke out on Saturday afternoon in a forest area and spread due to the hot winds fanning the flames. Cyprus was the first country to send Israel assistance during the deadly 2010 Carmel forest fire in the north of this country. Over to the Palestinian arena. Palestinians threw an explosive device at an IDF post near Beit Jala this morning. No injuries were reported. In an unrelated incident, the army arrested 3 Palestinians after finding an M16 rifle in their car, which had been stopped for inspection at a checkpoint at the Tepuach junction in Samaria. Yesterday, Palestinian Prime Minister Rami Hamdallah prayed at the Al-Aqsa Mosque after coordinating his visit with Israeli officials. Hamdallah was accompanied by the heads of the Palestinian intelligence and preventive security services. The visit passed without incident. The government has vowed to seal the breaches in the West Bank's security barrier. This follows the recent terror attack at the Tel Aviv Sarona market, executed by 2 terrorists who infiltrated Israel from the Hebron area. Hundreds of Palestinians continue to cross illegally into Israel daily, as we see in this report from IBA's Aryeh O'Sullivan.
This is how the entry to the Promised Land looks. 20 seconds of a good sprint from the West Bank, through a breach in the security fence, to a waiting Toyota driven by an Israeli Bedouin, and a quick getaway to jobs, but also possibly crime and terror in Israel. This driver says it's worth the risk because he needs the money. Besides, he says, the risk is low because the security forces are lax at best and impotent at worst. It is from this breach in the fence that the 2 terrorists sneaked through to perpetrate the attack in Sarona market in Tel Aviv. Security forces were only rarely seen. A lone jeep with a squad acted to try to stop the infiltrations, sometimes shooting into the air, sometimes firing tear gas, and even attempting to chase down the transporters, but in this case without success. These trespassers are from the Hebron Hills and don't have work permits. Many seek jobs in Israel because they can make more money here than working in the Palestinian Authority. Security officials are aware of the breaches in the fence, and it remains to be seen if the government's promise to fix the fence and beef up border patrols will be implemented or the infiltrations will continue. Aryeh O'Sullivan for IBA News.
Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee visited Israel last week, months after a failed bid for the Republican presidential nomination. Huckabee spoke with Israel Television's Yaakov Achimeir, expressing support for Donald Trump's bid for the presidency, while acknowledging serious signs of dissent within the Republican Party.
What I have to hope for is that Donald Trump will provide the kind of leadership and that he will ultimately bring a very different kind of attitude toward the presidency. And frankly, I believe part of why he has risen to the level is because people are just as angry at traditional Republicans as they are at the Democrats.
Is there a inner domestic, so to speak, Republican rebellion against Mr. Trump?
Not as big as the press would have you believe. The rebellion is against the party elite. The rebellion is against the establishment of the Republican Party.
But you know, you're very well aware of the criticism against Mr. Trump.
Sure.
That he's a racist, he's against Muslims, he's against Mexicans.
It's not true.
Is that the type of leadership that you are striving for?
I think the left-wing media in America certainly would love to say that he's racist or misogynistic or xenophobic, but that simply is not the case.
He wants to restrict the immigration of Muslims, to bar the entrance of Muslims to the United States. Is this not the racism?
Israel restricts the immigration of Muslims to Israel too. So is that racist? Are you racist here? I don't think so. You have an obligation to protect your people, and the fact that you have restrictions on who can immigrate here is no different than anyone else.
Why do you endorse Mr. Trump?
Because I know Hillary Clinton very well and have known her for 40 years, and because I know what a disaster she would be if she were president. That frightens me. We can't afford any more of what we have had over the past 8 years with the attitude of Barack Obama, continuing that level of foreign policy. It has had, I think, disastrous consequences, most notably with Iran. And any thought of continuance of that is, to me, very disturbing.
What changes do you expect from a new administration towards our area, towards the Middle East?
Well, I think if it's Donald Trump, he will be very mindful of the fact that the deal with Iran was disastrous, and he will undo it. If it's Hillary Clinton, I think she will think that it's okay and cross her fingers and hope for the best. I think that that is a very clear choice for Americans who love Israel to be able to make.
The police have recommended indicting supermarket mogul Rami Levy on suspicion of illegal use of information compiled on workers, following the completion of its investigation. In March, Levy and his son-in-law, Ophir Atias, who manages Rami Levy Communications, were questioned under caution concerning suspicions of use of customer information from mobile phone subscribers. At the time, the company denied any illegal use of data. Meanwhile, police in Belgium arrested 12 people in overnight raids across the country in an operation Brussels says helped thwart a plot to attack fans watching a televised Euro football match between Belgium and Ireland. 40 other suspects detained during the raid were later released. The Belgian prosecutor's office announced last night that 3 suspects had been charged with an attempt to commit terrorist murder and involvement in a terrorist group. Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel convened an emergency national security meeting last night and later told reporters the country had raised the threat to level 3 and that security forces would maintain a heightened nationwide presence. 94-year-old former Auschwitz guard Reinhold Hanning was sentenced to 5 years in prison on Friday by a German court for facilitating the murder of some 170,000 Jews during the Holocaust. During the 4-month-long trial, dozens of Holocaust survivors testified to describe their horrific experiences. In April, Hanning apologized to his victims, saying he regretted having been part of a criminal organization that caused so much suffering. Friday's court case is likely to be one of Germany's last Holocaust-related trials due to the advanced age of those suspected of being accessories to mass murder. Meanwhile, in Egypt, an Egyptian court, former Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi was sentenced to 40 years in prison on charges of espionage involving the alleged transfer of classified documents to Qatar. 6 other defendants, including 2 Al Jazeera employees, were handed death sentences by the court yesterday. Morsi, who was ousted from power in a military coup in July 2013, is appealing 3 other sentences: a death sentence, a life sentence, and also a 20-year prison sentence for convictions relating to other charges. Qatar rejected yesterday's verdict, saying the charge of espionage against Qatar against a former president and media people is surprising and unacceptable. Last week, Russia was reported to have repatriated to Israel a tank captured in the First Lebanon War. Now military experts warn it's the wrong tank. Researchers claim that the tank returned by Moscow at Prime Minister Netanyahu's request was not the tank used by missing soldiers Zvi Feldman, Yehuda Katz and Zachary Baumel, as it bears a different serial number. The families of the 3 soldiers are reportedly furious at the Prime Minister, accusing him of knowing all along and misleading them. The Israeli Magach 3 tank from the 1982 Battle of Sultan Yaqub in the First Lebanon War, purportedly housed till now in a Russian museum for decades, was expected to go on display at the Armored Corps Museum in Latrun. The Prime Minister's office said in response that there had been a misunderstanding and that it had never claimed that this was the actual tank of the 3 missing soldiers in the first place. In an impressive breakthrough for medical science, a new Israeli cancer therapy is being trialled using light. The technique involves injecting patients with a drug called Tucad, activated with laser illumination through optic fibers. The method, originating in Israel's Weizmann Institute, would obviate the need for invasive surgery or chemotherapy, meaning none of the side effects typically associated with cancer treatments. A trial with 50 patients is underway in Israel, led by leading Israeli urologist, Professor Jack Baniel.
It's a photodynamic therapy. It's basically a procedure where we can target the cancer and we can demolish it, actually, very, very exactly. It's something new that we've been searching for ages, especially in prostate cancer, where we know that many patients have focal disease, and we didn't have focal therapy. The patient may be cured. He may not be even cured of his disease, but he may have a remedy for 20, 30 years, which is exactly what we need. Most of these patients are men the age of 60, 70, not all of them healthy. And if you give them 10, 20 years with good health and without side effects, which is the main thing, then we've done a great thing, and we've done a revolution.
If a possible breakthrough in cancer treatment isn't good enough, kicking off the new week, here are 5 more good news stories to put a smile on your face. An Israeli firm develops the first blood test for detecting breast cancer. Octavia Pink, currently available in Israel and Italy, is awaiting FDA approval. Microsoft opens its 3rd research and development center in Israel, in the northern city of Nazareth. Birthright Israel launches a new joint program connecting leading American universities with IDF tech units to help generate new technology startups. Acclaimed Israeli author Edgar Keret wins the $100,000 Charles Bronfen Prize for his work, which judges ruled conveys Jewish values across cultures and has a global impact. And following the footsteps of Elton John, British rock band Queen is coming to Israel for the first time. The rock legends, with Adam Lambert as its lead singer, will hit the stage at Tel Aviv's Hayarkon Park in September. In finance, shares are up on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and the shekel remains the same with no currency trading on Sundays. Let's take a look at the figures.